Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Becca and today is a really exciting day. If you couldn't tell, I've got my overalls on, so best guess, what do you think is gonna happen today? Who read the title of the video? You already know. Today is the premiere of season 2 of my garden series on my channel. And that sounds like really formal, but basically I make garden vlogs every week throughout the growing season to just discuss and talk about and show what I am growing, how it is going, and what I am learning. So it's definitely my favorite series I think I've ever done on my channel because I saw myself grow so much last year. And I'm just really proud of what I was able to accomplish last year. And I'm excited to take a look down memory lane. And I've already filmed part of this video once. My camera died and it didn't have a battery, so I had to switch my other camera and it's a whole thing. Now I've got this microphone here. I will do my best to do like timestamps with links to specific things that I'm talking about, like from those videos. Like if there's a video that I mention and maybe I show some B-roll, I will try to my best to link that video in the description box at the timestamp that it shows up. I think I can do that. That seems pretty doable, right? Okay, so we're going to talk about the cost of the actual garden. Also, just want to acknowledge that it is a scary thing to be this open and honest about finances online, especially on YouTube, because it's very easy to remain anonymous on YouTube and leave rude or trolly comments and really have no, really have no consequences. So I'm posting this video in hopes that you guys will remain kind and considerate in the comments down below, especially when talking about money. Money is definitely a sore subject for a lot of people, and I always want my videos to be a place of mutual respect and kindness. So with that being said, let's get into the video. My garden is a completely fenced in cedar wood garden. The reason that I had to fence it in was because I live in Zone 6A, Columbia, Missouri, and I live on wooded acreage. So we have 7 acres total, part of which is wooded, which means that we have a lot of woodland creatures and wildlife creeping around our house. I shouldn't say creeping, this is literally their home. They live here. So, who's to say that they wouldn't see this beautiful, bountiful feast of garden as a buffet system that I set up for them, right? That's what I always say. My garden would be an all-you-can-eat buffet for the deer population in my backyard if I did not have a fence. So that is why I needed to do it. It was pretty much non-negotiable, and I couldn't start anything until the fence was up. So with that being said, I had a lot of complications as well because my husband had a really bad concussion at the very beginning of the summer and I had to do a lot of things by myself. So it was really difficult, but I got through it. We got through it as a community, as a couple, and I'm stronger for it. We're stronger for it, And also it was a great opportunity for me to bond with my father-in-law who came down to help me. And then one of my friends that I had actually recently made at that point, she also came out to help me build the garden. So it was just a really great opportunity for me to get out of my comfort zone in relationships. And I just really admire those people who stepped up to help me, and I'm so thankful because without them it would not have been possible. So let's talk about how much this all cost, because I'm pretty sure that's why most people clicked on this video. So let's go. So the wood to build the fence was $588. For the actual fence, I used treated cedar lumber and I got it from Home Depot. Treated lumber does tend to be more expensive, and so that's why the cost is so high. In addition to the cost of lumber last year was absolutely insane. Unfortunately, that was the year that I decided to build a garden, and it had to be done no matter what, and that's just what I told myself. And then I came to the fencing part of the actual garden fence because the wood is only the framing. So that would be the posts. I think there are 14 posts that are 4x4 square posts. And then I have 2x6s all along the bottom. And then I have 1x6s all along the top, which I am going to be removing the 1x6s this year because they warped a lot and a 1-inch wide board is just not suitable for what I wanted. It was a lot cheaper, but in the end, it didn't age very well. It all looks kind of weird as well. So anyway, the middle of the fence is now open, so we need to figure out what we're going to put in the inside of that. So I decided at first I was going to do a roll of galvanized steel fencing, and this is a great idea if you have like a crew of people and maybe like a big piece of machinery to like hold the entire roll and back up and like pull the roll tight. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it's basically just like wire fencing, and that's what I want to do. That was probably the most cost-effective thing that I could have done, but I didn't have all the equipment to do it, and I didn't realize that until after I purchased it. So a lot of these things are like oopsie purchases, but I decided to still include it because that is a big part of what, makes a project is messing up and paying for it later. Or paying for it in the moment when you were checking out and buying the wrong thing. So that was $170 for, I believe, 100 feet of fencing. That is what we decided I would need. And I feel like I would have needed more than that actually. But yeah, I didn't end up using it. I will probably use it in another capacity around my property or try to sell it on Facebook Marketplace. I haven't really done anything with it. It's just sort of sitting outside of my garden because it's very heavy and hard to move. So it's just sitting there right now, and I guess I'll figure something out later on. But what I ended up going with was cattle panels, and cattle panels were significantly more expensive, but they were significantly easier to use because it is just a piece of flat galvanized steel fencing, basically. I mean, cattle panels can be used for so many things around the house. Well, not around the house, but like around your property, in the garden, lots of things. I ended up making also a cattle panel trellis where it just like arches over 2 garden boxes, and it is absolutely beautiful. I cannot wait to see cantaloupe and peas growing over that this year. I'm just so excited. That was $259. I ended up buying 10 16-foot panels, and then we cut them down to 8-foot panels, and so they would be easier to move. And it was just a whole thing. Like, the guy in the store cut them for me, and I felt really horrible for him, but the 16-foot panels would not fit in my car, and even if we bent them, there was too many, and it would have been a disaster. So my lesson is either get that kind of stuff delivered or rent a trailer. The cattle panel fence is an amazing option, and yeah, I would highly suggest it. The panels that I bought were, I believe, 4 feet tall, so I knew that I needed to add more height because my actual fence posts are like 7 feet tall because it had to be really tall because deer can jump. So I did not have any traces of deer in my garden. Like, I'm pretty certain that like nobody went in there. Just in case, I added on some galvanized steel rope around the top of the fence just to keep it all secure. I ended up buying 2 packs of that. I think they were 50 yards or 100 feet, but I don't exactly remember. It's one of those purchases that I just kind of didn't document. But I wrote down $100 for that because I remember I had to buy it twice and it was around $40 or $50 each time. So that's what we're going with. So for the bottom, to keep out small animals like rabbits, I got chicken wire, and that wasn't too expensive. I think that I bought 100 or 200 feet of that. I'm thinking it was 150 feet of that, and that was about $60. So the total for the fencing in general, like not the wood, but the fencing, was $589. But with that mistake roll, that $170 that I didn't have to spend, that total is actually $419. So our total right now as it stands is $1,177. So now we're gonna move on to the garden beds. So the garden beds I had made because number one, it was going to be a lot cheaper to have someone make them at the time with the lumber prices. For some reason, maybe they had the wood already, maybe they bought the wood in bulk. I'm not exactly sure, but it was a lot cheaper. We did the math and it just made more sense to hire this guy to do it because it would have been, again, so much cheaper. So I bought 4 garden beds at $170 each, and that was $560. I am planning on making more garden beds this year, like quite a few more. I'll show you that in my garden plans, and I will be making those myself. Number one, because I want to have a tutorial on my channel, and number two, I think it would be really fun and it's not too hard. I feel like now that I've made this ladder, I could make anything. Like, I think last year I was just very overwhelmed with the task of building the garden and growing the food and all of that kind of stuff that I just did not even want to think about the garden beds. I decided to do raised garden beds because my soil is mostly clay, especially where I put the garden, because it is situated next to a tree line, which actually wasn't too problematic with the light until late fall. Actually, the right side of the garden does get a little bit of dappled shade towards the end of the day, but it's not that bad. I just decided to plant like lettuce and things that are a little bit more shade tolerant over there, but it's really like barely any shade, so I don't know if it really counts that much. So far, I'm happy with the placement, but obviously having the garden in like full sun with no trees around it would have been a little bit better, but I didn't want the garden to be super far away from my house, so that's just how I ended up placing it. I feel like I should have said that at the beginning, but that's why I ended up putting it in the place that I did, and I'm really glad that I did that as well, because it's very beautiful to look out while I'm gardening and see like this beautiful forest of trees. Also, the sun is like creeping in, so sorry about the sun lines. Okay, so for the soil is one of those things that I don't have well documented how much I was spending, and I think part of that is because I was just like really annoyed with how it ended up working out. So I got bulk soil dropped into my truck, and that was $80. That was 2 cubic feet or yards. I don't remember. It was 2 scoops though. Usually bulk soil places will base the cost off of how many scoops. So it was $38 a scoop. So I rounded that up to be $80 for bulk soil. And that filled up half of the garden beds. So that was topsoil and compost. I got 1 scoop of each, and that filled up half. And I definitely could have just gone and gotten like 2 more scoops of the bulk soil and saved myself a ton of money and heartache. But the thing is, I almost ruined the suspension on our truck. Actually, the suspension is like noticeably worn after what I did to it. So I put way too much weight in the bed of the truck. And we got some wear and tear on our vehicle because of that. It's fine, obviously, but we're probably going to have to fix that sooner than we would have if I did not do this. So something to note that make sure that you know the capacity of your truck before you get bulk soil dumped into it, or better yet, just have bulk soil delivered to you so that you don't have to even deal with it in your vehicle, because it is also very messy. But the thing with bulk soil and like getting things delivered to your home is they cannot drive typically on unpaved roads. So we have a gravel driveway, and the garden is up a like grassy hill type of thing. So the truck would not drive up there. Like they said that they wouldn't do that, because I had rock delivered later. So that's how I know this. But yeah, they wouldn't drive up the hill because it was an unpaved road. It's grass. It's probably a good thing, because there's a good chance they would have like completely torn up my grass or gotten stuck. And like, I don't want that to happen. So I completely understand. But because of that, I had to transport my gravel from the bottom all the way up to the garden, which doesn't seem like that much, but it was some serious manual labor, and that was really hard. So I would suggest that if you're going to get soil delivered, just know that that is a thing, and soil or rock, anything like that delivered, just know that that's a thing, and be prepared and have a really good wheelbarrow and some strong arms. I put down $200 for bagged soil, but I feel like I spent more than that. Like, I feel like I spent maybe $300, but I don't know exactly. So I just put $200 because that feels like a safe number. So I did end up just buying bags of soil because I didn't want to overload the truck. And with the bags, I could get a little bit at a time. And it just seemed like more manageable at the time. Of course, I didn't want to make that much trash. Like, obviously the bags are plastic, but when it came down to it, I just needed it to get done. And I was really, really upset that I did that to our truck. So I just didn't even want to mess with it. And I just got the plastic bags of soil, which I'm saying was around $200. So, okay, now we're up to $2,017. With any home project, you're going to have extra little things that you have to buy. So I wrote down as many of the little things I had to buy as possible. Like I said, I looked back at all of the old videos to see the random things that I was sort of buying here and there, or as many as I could handle, because it's, it's kind of annoying to watch your own videos back. So number 1, I had to buy the gate kits. So I have 2 gates on the garden, one in the front and one in the back. And I just used pretty much leftover wood for those. But I know that I did have to buy a few extra pieces of wood, but I didn't document that. So I'm just not going to put it in the cost because what is it? Maybe an extra, give or take $50, maybe 20. So anyway, I do have documented the gate kits. It was $50 to buy the actual like hinges with the handles and the little lock thing. So not too bad, but more expensive than I thought they would be. And I wanted to get like a black one so that it would look nice. I really like the way that matte black hardware looks. The next random thing that I wanted to buy was landscaping tarp. I put down landscaping tarp as a base for my garden, and a lot of people told me that it was wasteful, that it was a waste of time, waste of money, like all of the things. But I'm really, really glad that I did it because it gave me an ability to like visualize the garden before it was actually built. Number one, that was helpful. And then number two, like I said, it was a field of grass, and that grass and all of the weeds in it needed to be suppressed. So it was really helpful to, kill all of that grass off. And I really didn't deal with too many weeds coming up through the weed barrier. And actually where weeds did come up, it was between the seams of the weed barrier. So the weed barrier was 4-foot long panels, and I ended up needing 300 feet of it about. I have a little bit of extra, so maybe like 250 feet of it. And so the 4-foot panels, I tried to overlap them as best as I could, but I think when I put in the rock, they got moved around a little bit. So wherever there was a seam, there were weeds that came up. But having the weeds only come up in those specific places was so much better than the weeds coming up everywhere. And because I was putting pea gravel in, well, not pea gravel, it's like a little bit bigger than pea gravel, but those pieces are like relatively small. And I was worried that the grass would just grow up through it and sort of like inhale the gravel, because I don't want to mow over gravel. You know what I mean? So I just needed a clean slate. So I felt like it was a really good thing to do. So that was $150. And then in addition to the landscaping tarp, I needed the staples. So that was $20. They were like $10 a pack, and I bought 2 of them. Speaking of staples, I also needed to buy galvanized steel staples to staple the actual cattle panels onto the wood. So that was a really cheap thing. I think they were like $6 or something like that. I looked them up online, and that's what they're selling for right now. So I'm assuming that I paid $5 or $6. Now about the gravel. The gravel was in total $481. The actual gravel that I got was 1/2-inch rainbow pebbles. And I don't remember how much I got. I'm so annoyed. I think that I got 4 cubic yards. I'm pretty sure that's right. And honestly, I could use a little bit more. Like maybe 1 more yard would be perfect, but I really don't care. Like it's in some spaces it's a little bit bare, but I still do have some extra at the bottom of the hill that I could bring up. But I just have not had the energy to do that since I did the initial pull of like all of that gravel, because it was so much work, like shoveling, tossing. Like it was honestly the hardest part of this whole thing, besides drilling the holes, because drilling the holes for the fence posts was really hard, and I rented an auger to do that. And then for a garden, of course, you're going to need plants and seeds. I bought a lot of my seeds just from Orchlands, which is like a Tractor Supply basically, and it was about $120 for all of the seeds. And then I think I spent maybe $50 separately buying plant starts after all of my seeds failed. So I didn't have a very good seed setup, and I'm working on doing a lot better this year so that I don't have to buy starts. But a lot of my plants I either direct sowed or I bought seed starts, because like I said, none of mine made it, and it was really sad, but I still wanted to have food. And I feel like a lot of the reason that happened and like I didn't want to restart the seeds was because I was already so stressed out about building the actual garden structure. Okay, so that brings our total to $2,904. The next category is tools, and for this, the tools were honestly minimal. I had a little circular saw and a drill, and those were my workhorses for the majority of this project, but I also needed a bolt cutter, a staple gun, and a hammer. So the cost of all of that will really depend on what you're wanting to invest in. And at this time, we had like a $70 circular saw and I don't know, maybe like a $50 drill. And, I didn't have these like crazy expensive tools, but I was still able to build something like this. Since then, we have upgraded all of our tools. So we do have a little bit more heavy duty tools that would make stuff like this a lot easier. But I'm going to add in the price of the tools that I was using if you are interested in doing this, because I did a different video on my channel talking about how much it costs to make all of this. And somebody asked, well, what would it cost, including the price of the tools, which is always something that I wish YouTubers would do. So I'm glad that somebody said that, because it reminded me to add that into the totals for this. The tool rental for the auger, we had to get a 2-person gas-powered auger, and I obviously don't own that, and I didn't want to buy one. So we rented one from a local tool place in town, and it was $80 to do that. $80 was for half of the day, but our auger like pooped out on us halfway through the day, so we had to go get a new one, and they just waived the fee for the full day, so we just returned it the next morning. And so it would normally be more expensive, but we only paid $84 for half the day. So when you're sort of thinking about how much it's all going to cost, make sure that you think about like how long you're going to need the tool. And I would say rent the tool for longer than you think you'll need it, because you might run into snags like we did. Like we got the auger stuck like 3 times. It was really, really hard to drill through all of the layers of clay because it just like stuck to the auger. And also the auger wasn't that great of quality because it's a rental tool. So I bought a staple gun, which was $36. And then the staples for the staple gun were $15. I bought a large pair of bolt cutters so that I could cut the galvanized steel cattle panels really easily. Those were $30. And then I just said about $20 for a hammer. Let's add all of that up and see what the grand total is. All right, our grand total is $3,125. Putting that into words sounds nuts. Like that is very, very expensive, especially because I didn't even really have that big of a harvest last year. But I feel like this year is going to be different, and I will have a much better harvest because I won't have the stress of building a garden structure and making sure that the food doesn't get eaten by deer. And also last year was hard because I didn't actually start planting until probably June, which, you know, the planting season here is a little bit later than in other places because it freezes until probably May. But still, like I should have had things in the ground in May, but in May I was still building the fence. So all of this being said, it is an investment and there are ways to do it cheaper. I definitely could have saved money by not making my garden structure out of wood. You know, I very easily could have just used like steel posts and like hammered them into the ground, but it wouldn't have been as pretty. And I definitely toyed with the idea of spending less money, and you know, it doesn't really matter in the end because it's a garden, but I wanted it to look really beautiful as well so that it could be something that I am truly, truly proud of. So I'm really happy with the way that I did it. And up until this point, I never added up how much I actually spent. And I feel like if I was adding up how much I was spending while I was doing it, I would have been much more aware of my frivolous spending. Like maybe I would have gotten the bulk soil instead of buying all of the bags, or I don't know, maybe I would have done things differently. So as I move forward and work on garden projects and other projects in the future, I definitely want to be more mindful of budget. And I also want to acknowledge that I was able to do this because De La Plants paid for it. Like this is my job, and the money that I make off of sponsorships, off of YouTube ads, all that kind of stuff goes into doing projects like that. Now, if it was like a personal project and I was using my own personal funds, I definitely would not have gone like that far out because, you know, my personal income is a lot different than De La Plants, you know what I mean? So I had a little bit more leeway in that way. So I want to acknowledge that as well. I don't want anybody to feel like they need to make a garden to that caliber. Not that my garden is like, I don't want it to sound like I think my garden is like absolutely incredible and everything else. I do think it's really awesome, but I definitely was not like, I was not doing it and building it on the cheap is what I'm saying. So I don't want anybody to see my garden and feel like you need to do that in order to be able to grow food and have a successful like growing season. I had this beautiful garden and my growing season was very average. Like it really didn't change anything. It just looked pretty. So I just want to reiterate that so that you know, like, and you have like realistic expectations. And I'm constantly having to remind myself of that as well because it's super lucky that I'm able to do this kind of stuff with business money that I make off of my channel, because again, if it was like a personal project with my personal funds, I probably would not have done that. Like I probably would not have gone that far. So I want to say that as well. I just feel like that's important to say. Thank you so much for watching this video breaking down the cost of my garden last year. I'm so excited to show you my plans for next year. And yeah, I'm gonna make that a separate video because this one was so long. So hope that you enjoyed, and I will see you in another gardening video very soon.